We've all heard chilling stories that make us wonder, are they just fiction or is there something more? In this video, I'll share real events that happened to people and remain unexplained to this day. Get ready, because this is going to be truly terrifying. A mysterious neighbor in a townhouse. A young couple rented a small townhouse in a quiet suburb of St. Louis. It was a peaceful neighborhood. Neighbors exchanged pleasantries, but kept to themselves. On one side lived an older man who rarely left his home. On the other side, a friendly young family. After about a month, the couple noticed a strange smell coming from the wall they shared with the older neighbor. Initially, it was faint and vaguely sweet and rotten, but it grew stronger each day. They politely knocked on his door. Although they could hear a television inside, no one answered. They slipped a note with their phone number under the door, only to find it slid back under their own door. The following morning, blank. Every night around 11, they heard odd noises from that wall, like heavy furniture being dragged across the floor. Sometimes there were thumps, other times what sounded like distant moaning or crying. One night, around 2 a.m., the husband knocked on the wall, yelling, "Hey, are you okay over there?" He was answered by a soft rustling, followed by a sudden bang so hard it rattled the pictures on their wall. The next morning, they called their landlord, worried there might be a serious problem like water damage, mold, or something else. That evening, a man in a dark suit and gloves arrived, unlocked the neighbor's door, and disappeared inside. The couple heard loud scraping sounds, as if heavy items were being moved, and doors slammed repeatedly, like someone was carrying big pieces of furniture to the basement. About an hour later, the man left without offering any explanation. A couple of days later, they found a sign on the neighbor's door that read "Quarantine, no entry." Soon after, their landlord informed them the townhouse was going up for sale and they had to move out. He refused to give any reason. The couple never discovered the source of that awful smell or what caused those eerie nighttime noises. Even when they reached out to the police, they were told details couldn't be disclosed due to an ongoing investigation. To this day, they're haunted by memories of those scraping sounds and muffled moans behind the wall, reminders of something unspeakable hidden just a few feet away. My house is haunted. When Jason moved into his new suburban home, he never suspected that his nightmares would begin there. Initially, everything was great: a spacious house, a large yard, and seemingly friendly neighbors. But within a week, strange things started happening. At night, he heard constant rustling, as if someone was messing around on the floorboards. One day, he found a broken glass in the kitchen, even though he was sure he hadn't opened it. Jason decided to set up surveillance cameras to understand what the hell was going on. The footage showed shadows moving through the rooms and figures appearing at night. One evening, he saw the silhouette of a person standing in the middle of the hallway, staring at him with empty eyes. It was so horrifying that Jason almost packed everything up and left the house. But something held him back: the fear of the unknown. He began researching the house's history and discovered that several years ago, a tragic death of a family occurred there. Since then, the house had remained empty until Jason decided to move in. Realizing that the ghosts might be connected to past events, he decided to find a way to communicate with them. During one of the sessions, he heard a clear whisper, "Leave me here, fucker." Jason felt a chilling breath on his neck and understood that he couldn't leave the house without solving the mystery of its past. In the following weeks, things only got worse. Furniture moved on its own, mirrors trembled, and unfamiliar voices whispered to him all night. One day, returning from work, Jason saw the ghost of a child sitting on the stairs, mumbling something incomprehensible. He tried to ignore it, but nothing helped. The ghost became increasingly aggressive, and Jason realized he was trapped in a real nightmare. As a smiling man, Liza always enjoyed evening walks to the city when the streets were less crowded, allowing her to savor the quiet. One night, returning home after work, she noticed a strange figure walking beside her. It was a tall man in an old-fashioned suit, with an overly wide smile on his face. At first, Liza thought he was just some weirdo, but as he began to approach, horror gripped her. He moved oddly. His legs moved differently from the upper part of his body, creating the appearance that he was dancing or making some unexpected gestures. Liza started to speed up her pace, but the man always stayed right behind her, maintaining that same eerie smile. She felt her heart pounding faster, and a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Eventually, Liza decided to flee, running as fast as she could to the nearest building. When she looked back, the man was still standing on the street, as if he had vanished, but the feeling of danger remained. She never saw the smiling man again, but from time to time she hears his sinister laughter in the silence of the night, reminding her that he could return at any moment. Oh, but then she's supposed to find the smiling man again, reminding her that he could return at any moment. One evening, a few weeks later, Liza encountered the man again. This time he was even more terrifying. His eyes were full of malice, and his smile seemed to reflect his desire to cause pain. She felt goosebumps run down her spine and realized that this time she had to not just flee but confront him face to face. Liza mustered all her courage and stopped to stare into his empty eyes. The man froze, and in that moment, chaos erupted around them. The street began to crack, and dark silhouettes started emerging from the shadows. Liza realized that the smiling man was something more than just a ghost, and she had to find a way to stop him before he destroyed her. Midnight Game. Andy had always been skeptical about mystical stories until one evening she stumbled upon a description of the Midnight Game on a forum. It was a mysterious game that required completing a series of tasks at midnight to summon spirits. Despite warnings of danger, Andy decided to try it out to prove her skepticism wrong. The rules of the game were simple. At midnight, close all doors and windows, light a candle, and write your name on a piece of paper. Then you must choose a clock that chimes 12 times, and during each chime, record everything you see or feel. If the player breaks the game's rules, spirits may begin to stalk them, potentially leading to fatal consequences. Andy decided to start the game in her new house. She felt a rush of excitement as she completed the initial tasks, but soon she sensed an unsettling presence. The candle began to flicker erratically, and the room's temperature dropped sharply. During the second chime, she saw a shadow moving across the room, even though there was no one else at home. Fear started to engulf Andy. She tried to stay calm, but the spirits became more aggressive. Suddenly, the door slammed shut on its own, and a cold wind blew into the room. Andy heard voices whispering threats and pleas for vengeance. She realized she had made a mistake by participating in this game. At the third chime, the spirits became physically aggressive. One of them tried to touch her, leaving an icy mark on her skin. Andy knew she needed to stop the game immediately. She quickly extinguished the candle and opened all the doors and windows. The light flashed brightly, and all the shadows disappeared, but Andy felt that something was still watching her. She realized that this game might only be the beginning of her horrifying experiences. The next night, unable to forget her previous experience, Andy decided to try the game again, but this time she was more cautious. She followed all the rules strictly, but felt that something was wrong. The spirits didn't appear as aggressively, but their presence was palpable. Andy realized that the game not only summoned spirits, but also opened a portal between the world of the living and the dead. She had to find a way to close this portal before the dark forces completely took over her life. Candle Cove. Candle Cove was a small, almost forgotten town on the coast where everyone knew each other, and no major events disrupted its tranquility. One of the most popular attractions was the children's TV show Candle Cove, which aired every evening at 7 p.m. Kids from all over the area would gather in front of their TVs to watch fairy tale stories about the adventures of the town's residents. The show had a magical charm, bright colors, friendly heroes, and cheerful songs. However, over time, memories of this show became increasingly horrifying. Maria, now an adult woman, remembered how Candle Cove was her favorite show during childhood. She couldn't wait for the evening to gather with friends and immerse herself in the world of fantasy. But one day, something went terribly wrong. An episode became mystical and completely unlike the usual ones. The main characters faced dark forces that began to threaten their town. The scenes were tense, and the plot completely changed. Instead of joyful adventures, children saw scenes of fear and evil. After that episode, the show was no longer aired, but Maria began having strange dreams where she was part of that story. In her dreams, she saw dark figures stalking her through the empty streets of the cove, and she could hear the whispers of unknown voices. When she tried to share these dreams with her friends, they initially laughed but then started avoiding her, saying that Candle Cove had its secrets. Eventually, Maria learned that the show's creators were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Legends told that during the filming, strange events occurred, technical equipment malfunctioned without any apparent reason, and actors complained of insomnia and nightmares. Some local residents even believed that the show was cursed. Determined to uncover the truth, Maria visited the old studio complex where the show was filmed. In a dark, dusty room, she found archived recordings of old episodes. While watching the final episode, which had never been aired, she felt the room fill with thick candle smoke, and images from her childhood blended with the nightmarish creatures from the show appeared on the screen. Maria felt reality start to dissolve, and she found herself inside the program where she had to confront her own fears and unravel the mystery of Candle Cove. The internal world of the program was horrifying. Houses were covered in cobwebs, streets were dark and empty, and the air was thick with whispers and sorrow. Maria met other characters from the show who were also trapped in this world, and together they began searching for a way out. They encountered terrifying creatures that sought to destroy them and realized that the show's curse was still active. Maria had to find the source of the curse and destroy it before they all vanished into the darkness of Candle Cove forever. The Russian Sleep Experiment. The story of the Russian sleep experiment became a legend among horror enthusiasts, although it has never been officially confirmed. According to tales, during Soviet times, the government conducted secret experiments on prisoners, aiming to find a way to keep people awake for extended periods without severe psychological disorders. The goal was horrifying: to create an army of soldiers capable of staying alert and performing tasks without the need for rest. 5 prisoners were confined in a sterile-looking chamber where they were not allowed to sleep. They were fed only minimal amounts of food and water and were under constant surveillance. Initially, the experiment seemed successful. The prisoners were exhausted but showed no obvious signs of suffering. They performed tasks without complaints and even with slight enthusiasm. However, their psyches began to deteriorate over time. By the 3rd day, hallucinations began to set in. The prisoners saw shadows, heard voices, and felt the presence of invisible forces stalking them. One of them started aggressively attacking the others, hitting them on the head and lying about escape plans. Another began talking to imaginary friends who compelled him to do horrifying things. The atmosphere in the room became increasingly dangerous. By the 5th day, the prisoners' condition became unbearable. Their eyes were bulging, their skin turned pale and paper-like, and their minds were completely shattered. They became aggressive and unpredictable, trying to destroy everything around them. One attempted to break down the door, shouting profanity-laden insults at the top of his lungs, while another began unraveling nonsensical conspiracy theories, killing anything in his path. On the 7th day, the experiment spiraled out of control. The prisoners were destroyed not only physically but also mentally. Their last days were filled with horror and chaos, and when the experiment was finally terminated, the room was left empty save for shadows and echoes of their final screams. Some claim that the spirits of these prisoners still haunt the premises, serving as a grim reminder of the terrifying consequences of human greed for power and control. This story serves as a cautionary tale for many, reminding them of the horrifying consequences of scientific experiments that cross moral boundaries. Despite the lack of official confirmations, the legend of the Russian sleep experiment continues to live on, instilling fear in those who hear it and serving as a warning that some knowledge is better left untouched.